Hey everyone, I'm Patrick Jones, and welcome to episode 66 of That Gives Me Anxiety. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, ooh, my body's hurting. Which, I promise I'm not going to make the intros to this just me complaining about how tired I am all the time. I think I did that last week too. But it's becoming spring here in South Carolina, so yesterday I was out aerating the lawn, mowing, doing some spot treatments, putting down some fertilizer. I was out there for 4 or 5 hours, drenched in sweat. Disgusting, dirty, and I loved it. And then on top of that, I had my normal beer league hockey game, which I usually feel awful for 3-4 days after, so ow. But it's always nice when spring actually is here. I mean, February up north, right? I'm from New York. February is the worst month. It's awful. And it's already spring here. I mean, we got the neon pollen everywhere, but I'll take it. It's going to be 80 like every day this week. And when the temperature's there, just alleviates your anxiety, right? The sun seems to hang a little higher. Just makes you happier. Well, I've got a great episode lined up. Today, our anxiety is caused by elevators. This is going to be part one of a two-parter where I'm joined by my friend Alissa Salvatore, who's a host and an actress and a singer, all the things. And she's also quite nervous about getting on elevators, and she talks all about how things, or how that has affected her life. I mean, she's going on auditions. She lives in New York City. It's kind of tough to avoid elevators in New York City. And then on the expert side of things, we have Pallavi Yetur coming back. Always love having Pallavi on. So yeah, before we get to the interviews, I just want to remind you, if you're liking the show, to please remember to rate and review it. Throw 5 stars on there. Come on. You can check the show out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Or YouTube. YouTube, you can see my fun t-shirt this week. There it is. Teen Wolf. If you're liking the show and you want to support it, you can do so by making a donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. And if you're looking to try out some CBD products, you can do so with the Pure Spectrum CBD company. They're offering the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off your orders. I use them myself, gummies every day, the salves on my skin, moisturizer, just all tools in my tool belt to help manage my anxiety. And so, yeah, I fully recommend it. Anxiety Pod. Well, all right. I think it's time we make our way to the interviews. As always, thank you so much for listening and enjoy. Joining me now on the podcast, I have my friend who's an actress and a host, Alissa Salvatore. Alissa, thank you so much for coming on. It's so wonderful to see you.
I am so excited to be on this podcast. You and I worked together so many years ago, and it's just
so many years ago.
Get to do this and
Yeah. I'm always appreciated of people who I respect and are good hosts coming on to chat with me, especially when it comes to something it causes them anxiety, right? Because it's a deeply personal issue. But going back to how we know each other through Zazoom, which is Buzz 60 and all these other things. Mm-hmm. And I think we met when I was just standing in when we were auditioning a bunch of people. It was for a sports show, and you came on and you knocked it out of the park, and you had all these sports. I remember people asking me afterwards about how much you knew about sports. Really? And I thought you were this big sports fan. And then come to a couple months later when we got to know each other, you were like, no, I asked my brothers a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. It's such a classic case of faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a host. I knew I wanted to host. I love talking. I love talking to people. And I saw something in a casting notice sports host. And I was like, let me just go try. And I just researched what's going on in sports. I read some stuff just to have for the interview, the hot topics at the time. And I literally remember it was the guy, Chris something, a 24-year-old that walked away from a huge contract because of CTE worries. And I was like, let me go in hot with that one. And I was hoping you would ask me about that. And I just, oh man, and I booked the job. I couldn't believe it. And everyone, my brothers would laugh every week when they watched the show. You know nothing about what you're saying. I'm like, but I still love to do it. It was still fun for me, even though it was about sports. I still really enjoyed it. So that was
and like I said, you're very good at it. I didn't realize that was your first hosting gig.
Yep.
Very surprised to hear that because you were very polished coming in.
Oh yes.
There you go.
Aw.
we're here because I reached out to a bunch of people, like I said, about that I respect and would love to work with about things that cause them anxiety, and you presented the idea of elevators to me. So I'm so curious. I don't even want to guess. I just want to ask you
Yes.
what is it about elevators and how does it affect your life?
My heart is racing literally just speaking about it. I'm
Oh
not
my
even kidding.
goodness.
So I think that it happened or it started. I was 9 years old. I was doing community service for school
Mhm.
at a nursing home. And I guess I just had to go to a different floor. I was 9 by myself and I got stuck in the elevator. And it was like probably 3 minutes, but it seemed like it was forever. And ever since that moment, I've just been terrified to go back into an elevator. It causes such a visceral physical reaction. My heart races so fast. My cheeks
Mhm.
just start burning. I start sweating and I start like catastrophizing in my head before I even get on.
Oh
And
wow.
that's just where it started and it has not gotten any better.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a long time to carry all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we were going to get into it. I don't want to jump, but meditation is the one thing when I introduced it into my life and I was doing it consistently twice a day that my anxiety going into elevators really subsided. But I don't have the discipline to do that every day. So I don't. And I'm still really messed up. And it comes with so many repercussions in my daily life, but I'm sure we're going to get into all of that.
Well, one of those, I mean, you live in New York City and
Exactly.
you for what you do being a host and an actress, like you have to go into a lot of buildings that would have an elevator and not
Every
even
single one.
every single one. Yeah. So do you like how does that work for you? I mean, it's got to be painful.
Yeah, it's bad because your body, the amount of stress that I go through feels like fight or flight. It feels like the total cortisol, like insane fight or flight reaction where it's not good for your body. And I do it to myself multiple times a day, every day. That's why, not saying anything good came out of the pandemic, but self tapes like saved my life because I
Hmm.
knew that I can just do them from my house. So for years, I started doing commercials and auditions in my late teens, early 20s, and I would get to these auditions and I would stand in the lobby. First, I would ask the security guard, "Can I go on the stairs?" Never, you can never use the stairs. Which I'm like, why? Because fire hazard, like if you have to escape down this, I don't know. It's just like stairwells are locked. It's just like securely locked.
Yeah.
So I never have the option. I know it's going to be a no. So I go up and I stare at the numbers and I listen for the chains. And it's like all these different things start to trigger like, how long is it going to be? Is the door going to pop open right away? Or is it going to be one of those really old ones that, it has to settle first, bump you up and down a little open? If I've been on the elevator before and I know what to expect, it's a little
Mm.
bit easier. I'm like, this
Hmm.
one, it takes a second. This one pops open. This one's a little small, but it's always the same. Like I have to gear myself toward doing that. And my anxiety is just at an all-time high. And then by the time I get to the floor where I have to go, I'm like literally bursting with anxiety that when I have to go into my audition, I'm not like cool as a cucumber, relaxed. I am going in with so much anxiety that sometimes I can't focus on the script I'm reading. Sometimes I
Hmm.
can't listen to the direction, and I'm sure it's hindered me on so many levels to
Well,
begin.
I mean, I've gone on some of those auditions, so not as many, but just so I have a frame of reference. They are so anxiety inducing alone, right? There's all
Mm-hmm.
these strangers and they're like got notepads
Oh,
out and they're like
yep,
looking you up and down in a way like no person should be looking
yep,
you up and down like you're a
yep,
piece of meat.
yep.
And
Product, you
so
are a
you,
product.
yes. And
Yeah.
so you need a good frame of mind to prepare to go into
Yes.
that.
Oh my gosh. I'm I'm getting like PTSD right now. I'm
Oh
like, I
no.
remember those days. I remember those days. It's just it was so bad and there were times where I didn't even go into an audition because the elevator sounded or looked so intimidating, especially if you go all the way downtown, like Wall Street, Financial District. The elevators there look like dungeons and they're
Yeah.
so old and they're crusty and I would go like an hour commute to get there, look at the elevator. It looked like a metal box that would collapse at any second. I would just leave. And then I would get emails from my agents like, how could you not do this? And then the anxiety from ruining my relationships with my agents because I didn't
Yeah.
show up. It's like terrible. And I'm an anxious person in general. So just the snowballing of all of this, it was just so unhealthy for me. It
Man.
still is, but it just took a really hard toll. Probably
Yeah.
that's why I didn't sleep, and it's just like a big loop, basically. Yeah.
This is wow. I didn't
This is
realize. I mean,
serious, Patrick.
yeah. I never would have described you as a high anxiety person. I mean,
Yeah.
and all the people that we mutually know together, like no
Yeah.
one thinks of you that way.
I
You
think
must hide it in. I mean, you
it's
do hide it in a.
so here's the thing. I think that I have anxiety triggers, really bad ones. So overall, I don't go out into the world as an anxious person. I'm like pretty relaxed and cool. But if you hit my button, if I call someone in my family, they don't answer, I will like lose my shit. Like I'll give them a couple minutes, but I go into fight or flight.
Hmm.
Elevators, fight or flight. And that those are my two. So people that do know that about me are kind of like, but if you're a person that you get nervous when people answer the phone, you're an anxious person. I'm like, okay, like I guess, but like, yeah, I'm not walking around like all the time really nervous, but I'm very easily triggered by that and I go like
Hmm.
insane.
Oh
So
wow.
I don't know.
Man, I'm sorry to hear that. And this is a personal question.
Yeah,
If I ask you anything, like
yeah,
please push back. Have
totally.
you gone to see a therapist at all to or social worker or anyone like that to
Not
help you with this?
about that. I went about
Okay.
other stuff,
Sure,
but
there's plenty, right?
not
This is a
about like
podcast about anxiety, yeah.
yeah. And because I was gonna say it's not debilitating, but yes, it is for my career. It's so debilitating
From what
when
you've
you live.
described,
But
yes.
when you live with it for so long, it becomes part of you that you don't even recognize that you should get help about it. You're just like, but this is me and it's what I have to deal with. So, yeah. And I know that meditation can help me. So it's just like about me getting that discipline to do that. And then procrastinating now because I don't have to really go in anymore because of self tapes.
Mm, yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's a great transition for the listeners. I also interviewed a woman who's becoming a regular on the show. Love speaking to her, Pallavi Yetur. And so I can't wait to hear your reactions to her clip. So I think we got to
yes,
play the first clip.
let's do it.
Joining me again on the podcast, I have Pallavi Yetur. Thank you so much for coming on, Pallavi.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is the third interview that we've done together.
hmm
Really enjoy having you on. Something that I just expressed to you online or offline, but I feel like it's good for the listeners to hear it as well. So yeah,
I appreciate hearing it, so thank you.
yeah, right. It's like, no, you stop at those compliments, right?
Yeah, our conversations are great. I'm excited to talk about
Yeah.
this
Well,
one.
today we are going to be discussing anxiety related to elevators. And I was thinking in preparation for this interview, elevators have it all, right? Like there's the social aspect of like where you stand. There's the like, it's like flying in that, you're just in this thing and you can imagine every which way that it can go wrong. So someone comes to you with a little bit of or a lot of bit of anxiety related to elevators. How do you begin to break that down?
It's going to be really individual. As with any phobia, there are a lot of common ones, but everybody's reason for really identifying with the phobia is going to be really specific and individual. So I would first try to get at that. What do you imagine in this elevator? What feels so scary about the elevator? What is the anxiety really about? And I would also want to get a sense of what comes to mind. What are your associations? Because there might be past experiences that really inform the present fear.
Hmm. Absolutely. And how, I'm always curious, like how often when you're sort of probing for, the impetus for such an anxiety, do people kind of like reveal it? Is it what if it's really vague or maybe they don't remember it? Are you still able to get to the bottom of it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because a lot of these kinds of phobias where it is something really concrete is concrete because concrete is much more manageable to us than things that are vague or nuanced or in like a corner of our emotional minds that we like don't really want to uncover. So it's easier to kind of like pour all of our fears into this representation that's very physical. So it depends on the person. Some people, if we're talking about the thing, will be like, oh yeah, I hate them. It's messing with my life, how much I hate them. I have fears of X, Y, or Z thing happening, and there will be plenty of stuff to mine. But I could also see as we start getting deeper into the context of the why that people maybe feel like it's harder to touch.
Right. And especially since it feels, and this is something that has come up in our previous conversations,
that anxiety spreads, right? So it may not be that you had bad experience with an elevator, but you had a bad experience in a car, and now
Yeah.
you're anxious about elevators.
Yeah, that's something really interesting about that phobia in particular. So it could just be, so claustrophobia, for instance, is a fear of any kind of enclosed space. There's also, I have it written down because it's a crazy word, claustrophobia, which is the fear of being trapped. So either one of those could really apply across the board to a lot of different kinds of things. They could be informed by a lot of different things, like what does being trapped mean to each individual? What does an enclosed space mean to each individual? It could be like a stand-in for the womb, right? So that we are going way back into like Freud territory.
Right. Absolutely. So, sort of jumping in, someone expresses, it's just a small space and people are in my personal space. I feel like I'm in their personal space. Like, I mean, because it's hilarious when you actually think about it. There's like this nuanced dance and this like social understanding of where you should go based on when you arrived, right? So how do you begin to help somebody with that?
Especially after COVID, right? There are all these new elevator rules of like no more than 3 people, and you have to stand in the opposite corner, and you have to wait if there are too
And
many
face
people
the
in there.
back, yeah.
Yeah. Wear your mask and don't breathe.
Right.
Yeah, I think that I would first really want to understand how this might be impacting a person's day to day. So if they're feeling like I avoid the elevator at all costs and I work on the 14th floor and so that ends up being a problem for me, then, there's a little bit more urgency to really kind of understand, okay, what's going on and how can you really try to ease yourself in? Because the thing about a phobia is that there are going to be realities to someone's fear, right? Like their past experiences, what they truly imagine might happen. Like there's going to be risks to everything. But a phobia is like the irrational version of that. And so it's really about challenging that irrationality so that someone can see something with more reality so that they can do what they need to do, right? You got to get on a plane sometimes. You got to get in an elevator sometimes.
Yeah.
Can we talk? I know you've got a lot on your plate. You've got work, you've got friends, you've got family, pets, you've got the people that you make small talk with at the coffee shop or gym. You've got that bird that you see when you wake up every morning outside your window that you've projected things onto. Look at that bird. Doesn't even love its family. It's always by itself. You do that. Everyone does that. Point is, you've got a lot on your plate. Well, that's why there's Instacart, to take a little bit off your plate. Using Instacart, you search for all your favorite foods and things that you need from the grocery store, all online, all while you're looking at that bird, wondering why it hasn't called its mom. And they deliver it to you. They go to the store and do the shopping for you. And they can deliver it in as fast as an hour. And you can sign up by clicking the link in the description, wherever you're listening or watching. And that's a great way of supporting the show. So it's a great way of supporting this show. It's a great way to make your life a little bit easier because we all know that you have so much going on, like wondering whether that bird judges you back.
So one of the things Pallavi talks about is breaking it down, right? And thinking about what about an elevator scares you. And for you, it seems like there's a bunch of different answers to that question, right? You have this experience that you remember, but it's kind of spread into like, I don't like the look of this elevator. Can you pinpoint like a few things?
I know exactly what it is. It's the steel doors shutting and knowing that I cannot pry them apart if an emergency. I don't have a fear of the elevator dropping and killing me. That's very interesting, isn't it? It's more about when the doors literally go doom and it's like metal and I can't see anything. I can't, like, the clear elevators are a lot easier for me because I can see that I'm okay.
Oh,
But when
yeah.
I'm in this tiny space and these doors, like, I cannot open them if I needed to, so I'm trapped. I'm literally trapped. If the elevator decides to stop, I have no control over leaving. So if I have to pee really bad, if I'm starving, if I'm anything, my worst fear is that I'm gonna like have a panic attack and die and give myself a panic attack. And there's nothing that can help me. And I don't know if it's better for me sometimes to have people in there, to have another human connection, or if it's worse because it's too many people around me and it's like I need the space. I need the space.
Yeah, right. It's an added component of anxiety. And I was curious about this because I obviously interviewed Pallavi before we spoke. I was wondering about the social aspect
Yes.
of this, but it
Yeah.
can feel like when you're anxious around a stranger, it can feel so much heavier, right?
Yes. So because of who I am as a person, very talkative, I don't mind the social aspect of literally talking to people. It's the person is in my space and it's less space for me to have. So it's literally claustrophobia more than anything. And the funny part is with people in the elevator and my phobia, I actually babble incoherently sometimes because I'm so nervous and I just want to connect with someone to distract myself from the ride. And I'm like, so hey, what audition are you coming from? Well, that's crazy. Blah, blah, blah. And they're usually like, because I'm talking really fast and I'm kind of babbling and I get into territory where I'm like asking them about their neighbor or their third grade teacher just to be like, it's almost over. But for them, like, I'm better off if I'm just like, I'm kind of scared of elevators. Can we just like,
Yeah.
but
You'd protect me, right?
yeah, but then you
help
feel
me.
like a weirdo putting that on them because they're like, I don't give a shit. I don't know you. Most people are a little standoffish. So I don't know. I end up babbling and weirding them out. And then the elevator doors open. They're like,
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Especially in New York, right? People don't want to like chat at all.
Now, I do, but people don't. Yeah. I like people. I like connecting with people, but so it's less of the social aspect of it and more of the space. But another social aspect of my anxiety is if there's a lobby or something with a really big wait line because the elevator's kind of slow, it builds. The crowd builds and builds. So by the time the elevator comes, 1 million people go on. And that I can't have that. I have to go by myself. So I have to work up the courage to see who looks the nicest to be like, I know this is like a really big line, but do you mind if I just like ride by myself? And people are like, ugh! Or they'll be like, sure. And it's always like a crapshoot. So the anxiety never ends. There's anxiety around every aspect of this fucking elevator. And I have other stories about what happened because I didn't take elevators. I don't know if you want me to go into them.
Yes, I do.
So 3 that come to mind are, one, I was at One-on-One Studios in the city and they have like the chain elevator. You literally hear like the chains rattling. And I was like, I can't go back in there. It's whatever. So I took the stairs and I ended up missing the exit floor and I went one down further and I hear like a buzzing and I look and it's like an underground barber shop where this big meaty like motorcycle dude with tattoos and a shaved head is shaving some guy's head and he looks at me and it's like all men. And me, I'm just like in a stairwell with all these guys. And I go, oh, where am I? Swear to God, he goes, haha, you're in hell. It felt like a movie. I was like,
yeah.
Like, run back up the stairs. I'm like, where am I? I don't know who these people are. It was so creepy. Another time I was
You entered another dimension in that.
It literally felt like, do you ever see Pee Wee Herman's Great Adventure?
Oh, yeah.
It felt like some weird, trippy, like situation. Another time I was in Canada and it was my cousin's, her building, and she had like the card to go straight from the garage to her apartment. I was like, I need to just go in the stairs. She's like, okay. I go in the stairs. It's all like, what's it called? Electronic with the key. I get locked in the stairwell. I didn't have my phone because I didn't have service in Canada. So I'm locked in the stairwell for like hours. She couldn't find me because I kept moving around. I ended up on a rooftop, then locked out on the roof.
No.
Swear to God. Another time, I mean, this happens all the time, but I was like, let's race. You take the stairs. I mean, I'll take the stairs. You take the elevator. So my sisters took the elevator. I was in Spain. We were on vacation and I ran so fast, tripped, sprained my ankle, and spent the rest of my vacation with an ace bandage.
Oh,
so
man.
It's like all these bad things or like whatever silly things happened to me because I didn't take the elevator. So it's still impacting my life negatively. Like so ridiculous, you know? Like
how long were you on that roof?
Oh, like probably half an hour, but between the whole thing. Oh, and then to make that worse, I finally got back into a garage in a different part of the building and I see some lady with her baby and I was like, hi, I'm sorry to bother you, but like I'm locked out. And she was so scared because I just looked like a creep that I was like, can you let me into the building? And she like pushed her baby in the car and like drove off.
Oh, man.
Like, people think I'm such a weirdo. I'm just like avoiding this elevator is making my life so difficult and like having to make me like be in these situations that are so awkward. And finally some nice old guy like let me use his phone and I called my cousin. I was like, I am trapped, please.
Oh, man. Thank goodness. Jeez.
The stress.
Right. But when someone comes running up to you like, oh, let me use your cell phone, my first thing is to be like, get back.
Exactly.
Who are you? Why do you not have a phone?
I don't trust anybody. I don't trust little old nice people. I don't trust women because it's strangers and people will use anything as
They're gonna get you. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I was interested to hear about your lack of like anxiety somewhat to like the social aspect. For me, I can hardly stand the like not talking in an elevator, and like I think I'm very aware of like who's in my space and whose space I'm in.
Yeah.
And so like I just feel awful the whole time. It happens to me on the subway, right?
Ah,
Like anywhere. If I'm too close to someone, right? You know, we all have these like
yes.
circles where it's
We're
like this is
so,
like a partnership, friendship, like
yeah.
stranger. And like
Yeah.
if a stranger's that close to me, it's like, oh, I don't want them touching me. Like
Oh, so it's like uncomfortable and is it like you don't want to talk, but the silence is awkward or like you feel pressure to talk?
it's all of that. It's
Yeah.
spatial awareness. I feel like I want to break the tension by
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
something,
And
but
then you're the weirdo saying something. Everyone's just like, let's just ride down. Nobody gives a crap. And you're just like, I need to just like break the silence here. Yeah.
right, especially in an apartment building where you would see a neighbor, it just, you want to
That's awkward.
say what's
It's the
up.
people, the recurring people that you see that you're like, do I have to say hi again? I just saw you 5 minutes ago. Like,
Yeah,
that's harder
that
than
is
like total
true.
strangers. There's a comedian, I don't forgot who it was, but he was like, the elevator is so weird, like nobody speaks, and the only things that are spoken are like sounds. You get in and the light is already lit, and you're just like, yeah. You just make like little
Yeah.
quiet noise, like, yeah. It's a weird place. It's not
Absolutely.
fun in
Yeah.
any way. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good time to go to the second clip here with Pallavi, where we're talking about avoidance. Yeah.
I do that well. Yes.
Can we talk? I know you've got a lot on your plate. You've got work, you've got friends, you've got family, pets, you've got the people that you make small talk with at the coffee shop or gym. You've got that bird that you see when you wake up every morning outside your window that you've projected things onto. Look at that bird. Doesn't even love its family. It's always by itself. You do that. Everyone does that. Point is, you've got a lot on your plate. Well, that's why there's Instacart, to take a little bit off your plate. Using Instacart, you search for all your favorite foods and things that you need from the grocery store, all online, all while you're looking at that bird, wondering why it hasn't called its mom. And they deliver it to you. They go to the store and do the shopping for you. And they can deliver it in as fast as an hour. And you can sign up by clicking the link in the description, wherever you're listening or watching. And that's a great way of supporting the show. So it's a great way of supporting this show. It's a great way to make your life a little bit easier, because we all know that you have so much going on, like wondering whether that bird judges you back.
Well, the best example from my personal life, and to try to relate and understand how this process might work, is I'm doing a lot better with it, which is insane because I was so afraid to fly. And so when you say beginning to challenge that phobia, what does that look like? How do you go about that?
So first we have to explore, okay, what is your fear? What do you imagine happening in this elevator? And as I said, that's going to be different for everyone. And you're mentioning some really interesting stuff around the social component. So someone might come in and be like, I just don't want to be that close to other people. And so I would ask, why? What do you imagine happening around that? Is there an inherent lack of safety that you feel around other people? Because there might be a very specific place that comes from.
Right.
And so then we'd want to explore like what have your past experiences been around strangers? Why do you have stranger danger? Like there's always, again, there's a real risk reality that we can all kind of acknowledge, and then it's kind of like, well, what has taken that a little bit further into this territory where it's becoming difficult to manage? So similar thing with airplanes, right? Like some people who don't like flying, it's going to be about, I don't trust that this airplane's going to stay in the air, right? And it's like, well, historically, like if we look at the facts, your risks are pretty low that airplane's just going to fall out of the sky, right? So what is the reality, and what makes you feel so convinced that you can't trust that?
Yeah. I mean, there was a time where that information just wouldn't get through, and I really had to like sit with it and think of and just be like, I don't know. I think just over time and thinking about it not in the moment, right? Of like, if you're only thinking about your anxiety related to planes or elevators in that moment, it's always going to be colored in a certain way, it feels like. So talking to someone like yourself is probably the way to bring it down a little bit.
Right, like getting that dose of perspective, getting someone who's challenging their irrational voice. The other thing that happens is when we've got a phobia, we avoid the thing, right? So if you had a plane phobia, elevator phobia, you're probably doing everything in your power not to take a flight or get on an elevator. So that is also robbing us of the opportunity to disprove our belief. Because every time we don't have a safe flight or don't have a safe elevator ride, then we are not getting that data point that goes into convincing us like, okay, the more I'm doing this, the more I'm recognizing that it's fine. Because if we're avoiding it, we're not going to get that kind of reality testing.
Absolutely. I'm curious if I know you lived in New York for a while, and I don't know how many elevators you're in Los Angeles, but I'm curious if you personally have any like awkward stories or bad moments in elevators.
Oh yeah. I mean, the people thing is a thing, especially living in New York. I think that it did feel like hell was other people. There were a lot of aggressive people just in New York, and a couple of them I came across in an elevator. I remember I was coming out of a yoga class at the Exhale Spa on the Upper East Side.
Sure.
So very shishi and very like chill, like life is good, right? If you're going there. So I was waiting for the elevator to come, and the door opened and there was a woman inside, and you kind of like wait for a second to see if they're going to come out before you go in. So I gave it that second, and then I went in, and then she came out and she's like, you could have waited for me to come out. And I was like, what? First of all,
how much time? This is New York. We got to go. Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't understand where the miscommunication was there. And then it was just like, you're going to yell at me for that? Enjoy your spa treatment. Like, what are you doing?
Well, I'm sorry that happened, but that is hilarious. Just, yeah. I mean, the amount of people that would either be like drenched in sweat from the gym and be in an elevator. I mean, what are you going to do? They're taking care of themselves, right? But I don't want to be near them. Right. Or just like a drunk person is just like,
oh God, yeah, that's always a lot of anxiety when you see that.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, what is going to happen?
Well, it's just like it's Schrodinger's cat too, with like, when the elevators are closed, it's like, is there a drunk, sweaty, crazy person in there? Or right?
Like, what happens when the doors open? I remember when I was really, really little, I was in India in this hotel, and it must have been like my first elevator experience ever. But I just remember you get into this chamber, the doors close, the doors open again, and the carpet's different. And I'm like, how does the carpet and wallpaper keep changing every time these doors close? It's it's like you're going into a parallel universe. There's also, it feels very much like the phone booth in Bill and Ted, or like in Doctor Who, right? It's like this portal.
Well, and the interesting thing is, having a dog in New York City, elevator anxiety is a thing that like dog owners talk about, that they experience, and you have to get used to, and a little bit of exposure therapy in a sense for them.
Because of the fear of like the dog running away, or whose dog is about to come in.
That, and being like trapped and like being in a closed space, and just like not understanding the sounds,
like the dog feels very disoriented.
Yeah. So it's like, you have them sit and
you have
give
to
them
calm
treats.
them down.
Yeah. So it's not just humans that are afraid of these things.
Yeah, I guess there is something kind of unnatural about it, like stepping into this chamber and then not having any light around you and trusting that it's going to take you up and down safely.
Right. Well, that leads to another question, right? There's a trust factor in elevator construction. I mean, I don't know if this is a fair question, but it's like phobias in this example, elevator phobias. there's like a mistrust that routine maintenance has been done, or what do you think that kind of stems from?
That I'm really glad you brought up the trust component because that is going to be one of these very deep-rooted things like a stranger danger or fear around other people that's really informed by people's past experiences. There might be a mistrust of authority, there might be a mistrust of institutions, there might be a mistrust that anything constructive can get done in humanity these days, right? So a lot of kind of nihilism and defeatism can come through again in the form of an elevator. And
Yeah.
you're very right. You are kind of trusting that the manufacturer did their job, that that little plaque on the wall is up to date, and
Hmm.
you go in there and you see max weight whatever, and you're like, how do I know what that's going to be? So there is so much, there's a control component, right? You're completely robbed of your normal faculties to do something in the event of danger, and you have to put your hands, your life in the hands of this expert that is faceless and nameless.
Mm.
But, there is also the component that these are permitted and they're inspected, and there's a lot of stuff that goes behind the engineering and operation of an elevator that we don't know about.
Yeah. One thing, again, going back to the plane, but I assume that it would work for elevators too. One thing that helped me is that even if you think that people are careless, what do people all care about? And what do we project onto like these big corporations is like their money and their share prices. And like, I'm like, oh yeah. So all these airlines are going to be willing to have a plane go down and have their share price go down.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
so even if you think or don't believe in humans, they like money. And so they
Yeah.
don't want you to die because they
They
want their
don't want to
money.
look bad. Yeah, no,
Right.
totally. They definitely don't want to look bad. I didn't get a chance to look up like actual statistics on elevator malfunctions, but I would imagine like similarly to airplanes, like the number relatively speaking is really low based on
Incredibly.
like
Yeah.
how many people are riding an elevator every day.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even I don't have the stat handy, but I was going to put it in the episode. I still will. Being trapped temporarily is even an extremely rare event. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't doubt that it would be uncomfortable. I have a friend in college who was trapped in an elevator coming home from like a night out from, let's say, 3 in the morning until 8 in the morning. And
Oh,
right, that describes it. Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's out now. He has a great story. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, more
Well,
likely
and
that than anything negative.
those kinds of experiences and fears too can be really interesting because when you're talking about trust and control, like that kind of thing might happen. We don't have a way to predict it. So then your way of reclaiming some agency might be to be like, well, I'm never going to get into an elevator without having a snack in my bag. I'm never going to get into an elevator when I really need to pee. Right?
Right.
So there are ways that we can also sort of find these little workarounds of like, okay, no, I don't have control over this thing, but how can I ensure that I'll be okay?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, is that sort of contradicting a little bit of like what you were saying about like you're hedging a little bit in a sense of like, yeah,
I mean,
okay,
if you need to do that to feel okay for a while,
yeah,
like there's no harm in that unless it's like derailing you from being able to live normally. But
hmm,
yeah, I mean, ultimately, we would want to explore really deep down into what this is about so that you can really start to look at it for what it is and find a little bit of empowerment over the fear. And while you do that, it's always okay to prepare yourself in a way that makes you feel safer, right? I
hmm.
used to do that on the subway. Like I really tried not to get on the subway if I like really had to pee or if I didn't
Oh,
have water in my bag because you never know when those things break down.
right. Well, they do all the time, right? In fact, like the one time you would get home from work without like a delay, you'd be like, oh my God, life is,
Why am I here so early?
yeah. So this is a big one for everything that you've described, right?
Yes.
Pallavi talks about people who avoid the things that they're afraid of blocks you from getting the note or being able to remember that you were safe when you did
Right.
the thing,
Right.
right? How did that sit with you when you heard that?
The thing is, everybody says that. And first of all, I just want to say before I get into that, everybody thinks that my elevator phobia is ridiculous. And I just like am so annoyed because I want to be like, you probably have this, you probably have this. How dare you judge my elevator phobia? That's probably like much more not real, but it could actually fall and kill you. Whereas like something like you don't like the thing with all the holes, trypophobia or whatever.
Oh
it's
yeah,
called. I feel like mine could actually kill me, but they act like it's so ridiculous. Every person that I meet never understands this phobia, so I feel so isolated in it. And if I'm doing a show and it's like rehearsal and the cast is all traveling up together, I'm the one person that has to like leave. It stinks. But so the thing with that is I do still take the elevator because I have to. I don't have a choice. So I'm not technically avoiding it. I do, if I'm allowed to take the stairs, I will avoid it. But the chances of getting stuck are always there. And it's kind of high. I'm sorry, like the statistic is not totally, they get stuck all the time, multiple times a day in different buildings. They gotta like get called down to the emergency. So the fear of like, let me just ride it and ride it and ride it. I never got stuck again. So I think if I got stuck and lived through it, lived to tell the tale, I would be better off. But the idea of that happening is so terrifying to me. So I don't think it will help me to just keep riding the elevators because the chance that it can happen and I'm going to be there is going to happen eventually. With the higher the number is that I'm taking the elevator, the higher the chances it's going to get stuck one of those times. And the idea of like waiting for that one to happen is so much, it induces even more anxiety. It's like auditions. The more you go on, the more chances you are going to book one. So it's like the more times we're at the elevator, the more likely one of them is going to just stop. Could be for 3 hours. Could be for 5 minutes.
But all right, so I'm not a therapist, just saying that for everybody. But an exercise that has come up when I've interviewed a lot of therapists is this. Okay, you're in the elevator and you're stuck. What then?
My fear, what first comes to my mind is like hyperventilation, pass out, dead.
Okay.
That's like catastrophizing to the like nth degree. Like it's not me going, let me call down to the thing. It's literally elevator stops. I go and just die. That's what my brain does.
I'm sorry to laugh. I'm sorry to laugh.
It's funny. It's funny, but that's literally it. I'm such an extremist in my thinking that I can't think rationally. Yes. So go on, tell me. Yeah, you get stuck in the elevator. What happens?
So you have that panic moment. You're unlikely to die, but then what happens, right? You just keep asking that question. What happens?
Yeah.
You probably, I mean, I want to let you do it. So
yeah, I just am there and I can't get out. So I have to know that I just have to wait and be patient and I will eventually get out. The fire department will come or the guy downstairs will come and I just have to breathe and deal with it. So that all sounds really nice and rational. And I wonder how I would react if I did get stuck now in my like adult life after all the anxiety built to this huge place. But I will tell you a story that, okay, in November, I was in New Orleans for a job and we shot all day. So my phone was dying. I went up to my room and then I realized that I left my charger in the car. I went downstairs. It was nighttime. I went downstairs, went to the car, got my charger. I get on the elevator. My phone was on 1%. I get up to the 10th floor, walk to my room, lay in my bed, blackout. Like the whole hotel, blackout. Phones don't work. Nothing works. And I called, my phone had like 1 more percent. I called downstairs. I was like, what's happening? When will the power come back on? He said, we don't know. This never happened before. There was a huge game. Everyone's celebrating out. They had a blackout. And I immediately started panicking, even though I was safe in my bed, that 2 minutes prior, I could have been stuck in the elevator that stopped, blackout, no phone. And they have no idea when they'd be able to get the power. Did they know if anybody was in the elevator? Would the fire department get there in time? Because the whole block, including all the restaurants and hotels, were all out. That scared me so much. I still think about it. I still like, if that happened to me, that's like the worst case scenario. If someone is afraid of elevators, that I could have been in that situation. And I still get PTSD, brain like starts to, I don't know. It's really scary. So that even makes it even worse. I'm just not well with elevators. Yeah.
Well, I understand what you're describing when you say that, like, you understand it's like unlikely and people don't understand. I've been getting really much better at this, but I had for a couple of years like really intense flight anxiety. So anytime I would get on a plane, like leading up to it, I would be anxious and thinking about, oh shoot, I got a flight in 2 weeks, right? I'm gonna be miserable, right? And people come in with the like, it's safer than driving, right? And it's like, I know, I hear you, I know, but it doesn't sink in. And yeah, it's been helpful to start running through like that scenario I was talking about, like what now, and trying to like pick apart what aspects of flying. And for me, it was just a lot of discomfort, right? Like I'm wider than most seats. And so I'm like, I spend the time like this, right? Just trying not to touch people. I don't like to touch people and I don't like to be touched.
I'm sensing that.
Yeah. So I just sit there uncomfortable. And then, that led to me. So once I understood the root of it, I was able to like peel back the layers and be like, okay,
buy a first class seat instead for like $3,000.
Yeah. Just avoid the whole thing.
I feel the same way though about flights. So what exactly helped you? Because I used to be really bad with flights too, like really bad. And I used to just drink to deal with them. But I started meditating at takeoff, and that helped me when the turbulence kicked in because I was just much more chill. And I started learning about airplanes, and that helped me understand. So there's a great book called Cockpit Confidential that literally talks about the mechanics of the plane. And one really great thing is that when the plane is going at that speed, like that it's supposed to be going that, it's basically suspended in this thing of basically jello consistency. So it's like, it's good. It's like held up there. Everything is working so that it's just staying put. And that I always remind myself when the turbulence is going, I'm like, this is fine. We're fine because we're suspended in this safe jello mold. And that helped me with airplanes. So I don't know if that might help you if you want to read.
Yeah, that was one of the things too, right? Like the reason why they go so high is because the air is thinner, so it's easier to move, and it's above weather, and on and on and on. Yeah, so learning about planes.
I wonder if our generation, because I haven't talked to too many people older than us, but 9/11 totally ruined us, traumatized us beyond repair.
It's probably part of it.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that was a big. Yes, it was.
A big one. Yeah. But anyway.
Well, I think this is a good time to end episode 1 of Elevator Anxiety. Join us next week where Alissa and I will talk more with Pallavi about elevator anxiety. And before we close out here, I just want to give you the opportunity to mention social media or any websites or anything like that you'd like people to check out.
Cool. You can check me out on Instagram at Alissa Salvatore 20 with an I, Alissa, and also Starving Actress NYC for my food and travel blog stuff.
Which is so fun. I have to recommend that one to people because it's just you eating good food and
living
life, right? That's exactly what it is. And also on top of that, I mean, you have all these different hats. You're also a wedding singer, and you post clips of your singing, and you have such an amazing voice. So,
oh my gosh,
if people like this episode, you could sing at their wedding.
Yes, please hire me. I'm here.
Just make sure there's no elevators.
All the things, the voice, this, that. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't make me have to. Because I've done weddings where I had to do that, and it's not fun to start off that way.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
This is awesome. Bye.
Well, all right. Hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of the 2-part series. Next week will be part 2 on elevators with Pallavi and Alissa. Thank you so much to Pallavi and Alissa. Before I get to the weird thing causing me anxiety this week, I just want to remind you of my other podcast called Death Space Filling the Void. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. If you're liking this show and you want to support it, you can do so through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Just a way to make a donation. Ooh, a fish just jumped out of the water. That's always fun, right? You got to call that out. Then there's Pure Spectrum with the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off. Pure Spectrum does CBD, moisturizers, bath products, a bunch of cool, interesting stuff that I use basically every day. As I mentioned before, it's another tool in my tool belt. Then there's Instacart. If you want to sign up for home delivery of groceries, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. By doing it that way, you're telling Instacart that this show sent you, which helps support the show. And then there's the Cardist, who's offering the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off your initial order. So yeah, support them, and that helps support me. So I keep making this show. So okay, the weird thing that was causing me anxiety this week. I mentioned at the top of the show why I'm so tired, right? I was mowing and aerating and all these different things, and the stress I felt about like trying to find the right time to mow and aerate and then fertilize, because you don't want to do it too early, you don't want to do it too late, but also you don't want to be stressed about fertilizing your lawn. And I was. I mean, did I buy the right aerator? I don't know. God, that took forever. It's just, and it looks like a medieval torture device. It just has like nails sticking out of it, and you push it in the ground and you roll it around. Again, I did love it, but also I like complaining. Let's just be upfront with each other here. So yeah, well, we'll see if I chose the right time, right? We've got to see if the winter weeds die down a bit and if my grass comes from its dormant stage and comes alive looking green and beautiful. I think it will. Look at that positivity. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.